Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we have another shop talk video. Today's topic is going to be, should you be applying anti-seize on your hub face when installing your rotor? And that is what we're going to get into today. Now before we go ahead and begin, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button down below. Definitely smash the like button because it helps the channel out. With that said, let's go ahead and get started on today's video. So should you be using anti-seize on your hub face where you install your rotor? And to be quite honest with you, I'm not going to drag this out and make you wait for the answer if that's all you're here for. My answer to this question is simply no. Never do it. I don't recommend it. It'll always lead to problems. I never really do this myself. However, there are a few things you can do to help, but at the end of the day, rust is gonna rust. It's gonna seize, it's gonna get stuck, you're gonna fight it. Now, before we get into this, I will say that try to keep it friendly, everyone. I know a lot of people are gonna disagree. This is a highly debatable topic. Some people swear by this, some people are against it. And for me, my side, my position, I don't use anti-seize on, anything relating to the rotor on the hub or anything of that fact. And the main reason why, and we'll get into it, is going to be simply that you cannot compress a liquid or a grease. It'll act as a force. That's kind of the primary thing. Now, there's going to be a lot of you that say, Mike, well, you're not a part of the Rust Belt, so what do you know? I've actually had that comment so many times in a lot of my videos that are pertaining to getting things off, where people assume that I don't live in the Rust Belt. I think people think I'm somewhere down south, which I am not. I am in the Midwest. I'm in Chicago. We get a lot of salt up here in the wintertime. We get a lot of inclement weather, whether it be rain, snow, ice. It'll cause a lot of things to rust together. So for those of you that always comment, what do you know? You're not in the Rust Belt. You've never worked hard day in your life dealing with rust. You'd be wrong. I deal with rust day in, day out. As long as I'm at work, something's always rusted, unless the thing is brand new, which give it a couple months, it will rust up here. But either way, getting back to the topic at hand, should you be applying anti-seize on your hub face for your new rotor? The answer is simply no, and I kind of gave everyone a little reason why earlier. The fact that anti-seize or anything that you might put on there, whether it be the aluminum colored stuff or the copper colored stuff, it's basically a grease, and greases you can't really compress. If you take anything that's a liquid or a grease and you try to squeeze it, it's gonna have to go somewhere. Either it's gonna break with squeezing it, or it's gonna have to go the opposite side of it. And what I find is that when people use anti-seize on a hub flange, 99% of the time they're gonna take a bunch of it and just smear it all over, and you'll probably have like a nice thick film of it, and then they're going to put the rotor on there and basically it just sandwiches out. It just compresses out. Now here's the thing, even if you do a light coating of it, it's still grease. It doesn't compress. So what happens is you install your rotor with all that anti-seize or whatever you put on there. Let's say you even use wheel bearing grease. I've seen that in the past, which is probably even worse or about the same. But anyway, you clean up your hub flange, you put your anti-seize on there, you put on your new rotor, you get your brake job done, you take your wheel, you impact it on, you get it torqued, and then a lot of you just say, hey, it's good, it won't rust up. Well, here's the thing. Yes, it probably won't rust up, but in a few thousand miles, or maybe even right off the bat, I've kind of seen this scenario happen out with, right off the bat, as soon as the service got done this way. And I've seen it take effect over a couple months, where a couple months later, I get a customer coming and saying, hey, I had my brakes done and I have this issue with my brakes now. So what winds up happening is, since you cannot compress a liquid or a grease, which anti-seize is a grease, oil-based substance, you can't compress it. It has somewhere to go. So if it can't go sideways, it's just going to push back. And what that does is, when you have two parts with anti-seize, like a hub and a rotor, instead of them being flat like this, it's going to create a little divot, and it's going to want to walk and have a little bit of play to it. And what's the thing that can warp a rotor? It not being stationary and flush and tight on its axis. If you have a rotor that has the ability to have a little bit of float in it due to anti-seize being on there or some sort of substance not allowing it to fully seat on that hub flange, because that item cannot compress itself, so just pushing back on both parts, you are going to create a vibration. And that vibration may not be apparent right away, but that vibration will get more and more and more as time progresses. And on top of that, you have the ability to warp your brake rotor, because if that brake rotor is kind of doing this on the hub flange, depending on how the brakes are gripping it, because you have to remember the caliper will slide. It will kind of go back and forth and follow through on any waviness on the rotor. So if your rotor is already wobbling, doing a little bit of this, it's gonna help that rotor move a lot more when you hit the brakes and the calipers clamping on it, which eventually will warp out your rotor and possibly, cause damage to your brake pads or cause them to seize or side cock, and a whole bunch of vibration going through your brake system, which inevitably goes through your suspension and you feel in the vehicle. And let's just say it's just not a good day. Now, the reason why I make this video is because I recently had a Honda in my shop. It was a Honda Odyssey. The vehicle owner had just done brakes from a shop that's local to me here, actually a couple blocks away, and brand new brakes. They use good quality parts. I won't knock them for that or anything. Everything was beautiful, same parts that I would have used, quality parts. But where they screwed up is that whoever did the brakes decided to clean the flange really nicely, but then smear a bunch of anti-seize on it. And it took a couple months, but this customer's concern was when they're on the highway and they hit the brakes, the whole car is just vibrating, ripping the wheel off. The brakes were pulsating on the brake pedal. I mean, I drove this thing. It was pretty sketchy. And even me, I was like, oh, wow, we probably have like a suspension component that's loose or something for it to shake this bad. But after looking at it and figuring out that everything on the front end was nice and tight and perfect, all the bushings, ball joints, tie rods, everything was immaculate. We went a little bit further. I saw that there was a lot of anti-seize on the hub flange area, and I basically cleaned it all off, put everything back together, test drove it again. The car did drive, night and day difference, but we still had warped rotors, which ultimately led to the vehicle owner having to redo the brakes once again. And it wasn't just an issue of it warped the rotor. That anti-seize actually got hot, and as the rotor was spinning, most of it flung up from the hub and the wheel surface, because they also put some on the wheel and the rotor surface area. And it had made its way onto the rotor surface where the brake pad will typically glide on, and the brake pads were contaminated. And the only reason why I know that is because when I took the brake pads off, you can see these dark little splotches on there, which are indicative of like oil getting in there and getting really hot and just kind of cooking it. So we had hard spots on our pad, and there was imprinting on the rotor. I mean, it was pretty bad. I wish I had made a video on it, but this vehicle was, I guess we say, in a rush. I had to get them in and out. They only had X amount of time, and every time I video something, it tends to just slow down the process a little bit. But otherwise, it would have been a great video to show exactly what we're talking about here today. So if everyone out there is saying, Mike, if I can't put anti-seize on there, what do I use? Here's my method. This is what I like to do. And it works out pretty good, and it's not gonna, hurt anything. I've always been accustomed to cleaning my hub, no matter what. Whether you're reusing your rotor or anything, if you take a rotor off, you're gonna have to clean the hub surface and the rotor surface if you're gonna reuse it. So the backside of the rotor has to clean up, and then the hub flange. Instead of using a bunch of anti-seize, what I like to do is use a mild penetrating oil, something like WD-40 or whatever that you typically use to, throw on your bolts, and just spray it on there, light coating, and then wipe off the excess. And that should help rust-proof it a little bit. Now, is it really gonna rust-proof it? Probably not. There are also some other products that I've seen other people use that I've actually implemented and I've experimented with, and they seem to be good. You can also use something like fluid film, a light coating of that. It'll help minimize the rust and get the rotor off. But it's a thin base of like a water oil base that's very thin. The thing is, you can get stuff on there because inevitably water does get behind there when you're driving. Let's say it's raining, you splash into a puddle, you will kind of get water in or around the area. The thing is, you don't want it to be super thick. If you spray it with some fluid film and then wipe off the excess and just have a thin film layer, it's not going to give you the headache that applying a bunch of anti-seize will, because anti-seize is oil based, really won't compress. It'll serve as a hydraulic type of function when it's being squeezed, versus if you just have like a light coating of like WD-40, which is basically just water with a little bit of oil base in there, or a little slickness. it's not really going to affect anything or cause the issues that a thick grease will. So this is just my 2 cents on this. I know it's a highly debatable topic. Let's just keep it nice and stay simple in the comments. I would love to hear what everyone else out there is doing and your experiences on this, because ultimately I can't test out every method. I can't just say car A, I'm going to do this, car B, do this, and so on. I got to keep my stuff consistent to where I don't have issues, because I am servicing customer vehicles who don't have time for me to do experiments on their vehicles. Whenever I decide to change or add a new implement to, let's say, my workflow, I always test it on one of my vehicles to make sure it's not going to give me issues. And after a couple months worth of usage, if I'm not having an issue, then I typically will apply that to customer vehicles. So if anyone out there has a method that works great, that won't cause an issue that I didn't cover or maybe I don't know about, feel free to chime in down below and let me know. I would love to hear it. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and cut this video here, guys. As always, comment, like, and subscribe, because it definitely helps the channel grow. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I'll catch you on the next video.